the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors special meeting for Tuesday, October 14th to order. Please rise as you're able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you may be seated. And we will recognize the Assistant Township Manager to give us the meeting procedures and the call to roll.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of the board, staff, and public for joining us this evening for the October 14th, 2025 Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors special meeting. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you were in attendance virtually using the WebEx platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chair calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium and state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on. Members of the public attending using the WebEx platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the WebEx meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Patterson. Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Heller.
Here.
Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
All right. We have no announcements and proclamations this evening. Did we have any public comment? No public comment. We do have, there are no corrections to the minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve October 7th meeting minutes.
This is Patty, so moved.
This is Matt, second.
Got a motion by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Heller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. All right, reports and presentations. Hispanic Heritage Month will continue through tomorrow. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Filipino American Heritage Month, German American Heritage Month, Italian American Heritage Month, Polish American Heritage Month. Pennsylvania Dignity Day is tomorrow, and I do believe there are some events around town, so I encourage people to check those out. And the Diwali Hindu Festival of Lights will be October 20th. No unfinished business. We'll move to the new business. Tonight's consent agenda, we have an updated social media policy and authorization to enter an agreement with HRG for engineering services, and the appointment of township representative to the Center County MPO Technical Committee. If there are no one that wants to deliberate any of those items, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Patty, so moved.
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Got a motion by Ms. Stevens, second by Ms. Strickland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. And that will then move us to the Ferguson Township 2026 operating budget, and I will recognize the township manager for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a continuation of the meeting from Tuesday evening, and I'll yield the floor to our Finance Director, Todd Grady.
I was going to say, before we get started, should I maybe open up the floor for any public comments from last time? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's your decision, Chair.
And I guess if any board members had anything urgently that they wanted to bring forward, so if not, I would open the floor if there was any public comments on budget.
Thank you.
I was going to say, if you have anything that will be on the agenda for tonight, we'll give some time later on for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Watch, there will be a quiz at the end of it.
Hey, study.
Evening, Board, and thank you again for the opportunity to provide insight onto the proposed 2026 Ferguson Township budget. Also, thanks to staff for developing the document. In general, the 2026 budget document is over 600 pages and is really not a very resident-friendly document. It takes a lot to understand exactly how the document flows, but having said that, the new budget software does provide some colorful graphics, but I believe it lacks a lot of specificity and detail about what and how the revenues and expenditures are developed. Tonight, I'd like to focus your attention on the revenue side of the budget, and I hope that each of you have access to the PDF version of the budget, as I plan to reference specific pages during my comments. So I'll give you a minute if you want to pull your PDF copy of the budget up so that, my references to it, you can actually see what I'm speaking about. Revenue projections are critical in budgeting, and I have always felt that and had a philosophy that the budget should be developed around what current resources the township has available, and then decide what the township can afford rather than the other way around. I think this was a dialogue that the board members have had, particularly on the COG Finance Committee, of getting the expenditures up front and then handing the municipalities the bill. And I think that holds true as a way to handle municipal budgets also. But I want to reference, to begin with, in the general fund, page 30 of the PDF. If you look at the projected end fund balance, it is referenced as $10,993,798.28. But that would be the end of 2025. That's the projected year end. But the beginning balance for 2026 is $10,600,688.26. It's $393,110.02 difference. So somewhere there's a disconnect between, if I'm understanding the document, there's a disconnect between what happens on December 31st projected and where you're at on January 1 of the following year. This is true for every other fund in the budget that I've taken a look at. Now, some of them are very de minimis, but the ones I'm going to talk about are pretty significant. I'm going to leave it to your judgment, though, why the township is projecting to spend another $4.5 million more in 2026 than in 2025, and that's a gap that you'll have to deal with. Page 80 of the PDF, and I'm going to go to that also if I can here. This is your general obligation fund. The fund balance at the end of 2025 is projected at $431,780. This is $41,213 more than the debt service that you're going to incur in 2026. I'm not sure why this is such a high fund balance being carried forward. And second, why not just eliminate the transfer from the general fund to the general obligation fund for 2026 and give yourself another $431,000 of general fund dollars that you'd have some leeway with. But I don't understand why we're, adding another $400 and some thousand to the general obligation fund and then spending that amount and still having a balance of $400 and some thousand. I don't know if you see that on page 80 or not. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay. The Park Improvement Fund is on page 147 of the PDF. The projected 2025 ending fund balance in this is $808,409, while the beginning fund balance for 2026 is shown as $318,200, a difference of $490,209. This beginning balance results in a negative year-end fund balance in 2026. So that in itself would solve the negative fund balance there if the projected fund balance for 2025 was carried forward. Liquid fuels is on page 158 of the PDF. That shows a projected fund balance at the end of 2025 of $523,129, while the 2026 beginning balance is $798,000. So you either have too much money to begin the year or not enough to cover the expenses for the year. But it's a difference of $266,845. The Tootie Park Fund, which is shown in your PDF on page 185.
Sorry, 1 second, I'm still looking over.
And if I'm going too fast for you to look at the PDFs, let me know.
I apologize.
The projected fund balance in the Tootie Park Fund is $2,758,386, while the 2026 beginning fund balance is $2,306,190. That's a difference of $452,196. So again, there's a carry forward. It appears though the carry forward is maybe not the correct number. So why is that important? Well, if the beginning fund balances are not correctly matched to the year-end projected fund balances, then there's a perception that there could be a revenue shortfall. The revenue shortfall may be interpreted as a need to increase taxes or reduce expenditures. So it's really important that the fund balances carried forward reflect what the projected fund balances are for the previous year in 2025. I want to talk a little bit about revenues, and I know that the board is having some dialogue with residents right now with regard to the hydrant fund. I attended that meeting, and James did a nice job of facilitating that meeting. Overall, in looking at the website version of the budget, it doesn't match the PDF version correctly. If I'm looking at it correctly, and I'm not saying I'm doing it right, all I'm saying is it's difficult to match the website version of the budget with the PDF. And I might note in this particular instance with regard to the fire tax increase, the website version details a real estate fire tax of $616,117, while the PDF version does not mention the new tax nor include it in the overall taxes being levied in 2026. If you look at 7.0, the web version compared to page 30 of the PDF as reported in the budget document, a fire protection fund will be established, but the new fund is not depicted in either the website or the PDF version. So we have no idea, where the revenues are coming from and how the money is being spent out of the new fire services tax fund. A 1 mil real estate tax, which is proposed in the 2026 budget, would generate, according to that document, $616,117. So I did a real quick comparison on the expenditure side of the fire protection comparison of the 2026 budget with the 2025 budget. Most of those expenditures in the 2025 budget for those fire services or fire protection related items are in the general fund and the fire hydrant fund. So my understanding is that there's going to be elimination of the fire hydrant assessment. So there won't be a front footage assessment applied to only certain properties within a certain radius of the fire hydrants. And in looking at the GIS map that James prepared, it appears to me that just about all of the township is covered by appropriately functioning fire hydrants, except for the west end, which is serviced by Rock Springs. But in 2025, the general fund for fire protection expenditures, COG, volunteer fire contributions, less the foreign fire relief tax, was $554,000. In addition to that, you had hydrant expenditures of $126,840 for a total of $680,840. In 2026, those related expenditures from the general fund are $682,354 for fire protection services, which are COG, Alpha, et cetera, volunteer fire contributions, and not including the foreign fire relief tax, plus an additional $126,840 for fire hydrants, for a total fire services expenditure of $809,194. The difference between those numbers is $128,354. So that's the makeup that you really need. That's the amount of money that you really are budgeting for to make up. My point here is that currently the general fund is covering those COG volunteer fire company expenditures. And so let's assume that those expenditures are coming from the real estate tax. Those are without a dedicated funding source. So wouldn't the dedicated tax be needed to fund just the hydrant costs? In other words, if you add your additional $1 million of real estate tax, it's kind of like double taxation for the same expenditures. So I'm just suggesting that you take a look at that. It appears to me that you could reduce the general fund, the general tax, real estate tax, by a certain amount anyway, down to whatever you deem appropriate. But it doesn't seem appropriate to use general fund real estate taxes and fire services tax for the same cost, for the same expenditure. I understand the idea of replacing the hydrant fund, though. And I don't think that's a bad idea. So, at the end of 2026, though, you're going to have $63,479 in fund balance in the hydrant fund. And those dollars were put in there by specific property owners, not by the entire township, by specific property owners. So they've contributed to that fund. How will that fund balance be used? Has there been any thought to that? And should those property owners that contributed to the fund receive some type of credit? Just posing the question. It seems to me that those dollars were put in there by specific property owners, and maybe some of those dollars should be returned to them in some form. On the earned income tax side, page 34 of the PDF, the 25 budget included EIT revenues of $8.4 million, while the projected 25 EIT revenues is $8.8 million, so $400,000 more. You budgeted 8.4, you're projecting you're going to collect about $400,000, a little over $400,000 more by the end of 2025. So that was 4.85% more than what you budgeted. Interestingly, the 2026 budget is proposed to collect $7,681 less than what you're projecting to collect in the end of 2025. So unless we're anticipating huge layoffs in the township, somebody's moving out, there are gonna be fewer wage earners. The number doesn't seem to be realistic with regard to actual collections in 2025. If the EIT is collected at even 3% more than the 2025 projected budget, you'd receive another $264,000. So I think 3% increase in wages in the township, baseline wages, would result in $264,000 more in earned income tax. So you'd be over $9 million in collection, which is additional funds that the board would have to offset expenditure issues. Finally, I guess I'm just going to talk about transfers. Total transfers into the general fund is $3,970,438. I think it would be helpful, number one, if those transfers were better detailed. I see general fund in, general fund out, that kind of thing. Page 34 of the PDF, though, indicates only $1.1 million in transfers from the TIF. And the question is, are there other transfers? So I went to the TIF and I looked at that. On page 129 of the TIF, of the PDF, TIF revenues by object show an interfund transfer into the TIF of $1,385,438. But then it also shows a transfer out to the general fund of $1.1 million. So I don't understand the transfer in, transfer out from the fund. It seems like a lot of moving of transfers. If you're $285,000 short or $200,000 short, that's a different story. Last but not least, I just want to note that the manager has noted at the last meeting that the Tootie Park trustees have not provided at this time proposed operator capital expenditures for 2026 to be included in the budget. So I think those will be forthcoming fairly shortly here. But I know that as presented, the budget doesn't reflect any of those potential additional capital or operating costs. Those are my comments tonight. Sorry to be so lengthy.
Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate public input in the budget process. I know this is a matter of discussion that is near and dear to our residents, so definitely appreciate your insight. And this is, of course, a draft budget. We are kind of in the process of, fine tuning it. So we got tonight and another night and probably a little bit more here and there before final adoption. So
My intent and my comments are just to help improve the process a little bit.
and yes, thank you for that feedback as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Chair, I would also like to say if Mr. Kunkel would like to come in and set a time to meet with our finance director, myself, or any of our team members that prepare the budget, we are happy to have him and have his, his former expertise provide and inform our process.
Thank you.
Yes.
If I may, I was wondering if we might also be able to have staff response to each of these, and just maybe at an upcoming future discussion.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is thank you, I appreciate that, and I'd like to be able to sit down with our finance director and review each of these comments, and then I'm happy to provide either a response or an update to the board, and absolutely be forthcoming in the observations that Mr. Kunkel has brought forward, and share whether it be in a written memo to the board or in dialogue at a future meeting.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So we flagged the comment
And thank you,
itself,
Mr.
but
Kunkel,
yeah,
appreciate all of your comments.
Yep. Yeah, I think since Teresa's got a copy there, so yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. And was there any other public comment?
Jenna, did you get a copy of this? Here, you can.
She's like,
Well, I was gonna give you all mine.
Here, I'll go ahead and take this. Thank you.
All right. Okay, there being that there was no further public comment, thank you, Centrise, for allowing me to give the time for public comment. I know with everyone's schedules, it is kind of not always easy for members of the public to get to each meeting at the exact time that we have something to discussing something, but we accept all comments throughout the process. So I think you said Todd takes it from here to continuation.
Thank you. Yes.
So I will recognize the finance director.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. We'll go through the web version.
Did you have the web version?
Yeah, good to go.
Yeah, if everyone's using the web version, I'll use the web version myself tonight.
Is everybody using the web version?
It looks like we are.
I'm not,
Okay.
but don't go. I use both.
I have
Got a couple things.
I have the page
A lot of-
numbers as well, so we can go to that.
Again, the big screen is nice.
Okay, we'll start with 6.4, the COG on page 225. And basically, we went over the COG budget multiple times. We have presentations from them as well. This shows the main differences. There's some drops in administration. The main difference of the increases is the COG fire contribution. And also Recs and Parks went up as well, and the library. And then there's a jump as a percentage in the senior center as a rather large increase.
Mm-hmm.
This does not include the planning portion because it falls under planning, so it's not the entire COG budget. And fire capital contribution also went up by $12,000. And the foreign fire relief is just an in and out. We get a revenue from the state and then we pass it on. So that went up for 2025. So that's what I put it as the projection for 2026. Anybody have any questions or there's?
And where's Mr. Estelle?
91-406-530
Oh, is that it?
in the 188,000. Not just for him though. If there's no questions, we'll move on to the police department. Lieutenant Lewis will take it from here. I'll pull it up on the screen, and it's on page 247, section 6.6.
What's the general flow for this, if I might ask?
Just going through.
Do you want me to go through line by line?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. I wasn't really fully sure my first go around with this. Salaries and wages under personnel is
249, Patty.
Yes, I got, thanks.
give her a chance to catch up.
I got it.
You're all
Okay,
set?
Yep.
Salaries and wages is tied to the collective bargaining agreement. The changes reflect an increase in salaries based on the 2026 increase of 5%. I could move through to longevity pay is going to be tied to a set number based on the collective bargaining agreement. Increases in the general overtime fund would be, again, the increase is tied directly to that 5% wage increase. There's not necessarily an hourly change in that fund. But I did get broken down in a different manner this year, just to sort of line item out for your benefit where some of that overtime expenditure is going to, with 50% of it being reimbursed overtime through either university requests for assistance, countywide task force, or state grant programs.
Okay. The general overtime I take, that's just gonna be just unforeseen events, storms and.
It's a bit of both. It could be as simple as overtime for a storm. It could be a major call at the end of a shift where officers are held over, whether it's for paperwork or processing. It also includes things like court overtime, which is part of the collective bargaining agreement. So if officers have to attend court for arrests on their days off, it kind of covers the whole gambit of day-to-day expenditures on a set hourly department.
Very insightful details. Appreciate that.
Of course. If there are questions, I'll move on to uniforms and equipment.
And nobody here wanted to fly. Okay.
Feel free to interrupt me, or else I'll just keep going. For uniforms and equipment, it was a small reduction from the 2025 budgeted amount. We do have 2 officers and a chief to outfit potentially is what is thought to be known for the 2026 year. There are some additional breakdowns that have been included, expected ballistic vest expenditures, an unanticipated items fund that didn't change year to year, replacement uniforms, which tend to be restricted to the equivalent of like one warm weather, one cold weather uniform per year for each officer. Some additional items, we have gas mask filters for riot control that expired, so those are a separate new line item for this year. And our CBA dictates a clothing allowance for non-uniform detectives that I think was tied into a fund that I just line itemed out separately just for easier transparency. Do you guys have any questions on the uniform and equipment?
Just a curiosity question. The filters, what's their shelf life?
I believe it's 5 years, but I don't want to quote that exactly because I would go for our uniform and equipment manager for that. But I think it's 5 years.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
All right, moving down to office supplies. That's our general office supplies that our record staff tend to manage. There wasn't a change from year to year reflected in the 2026 budget. Actually, I think there's a $500 reduction. And that's based on looking at prior year numbers and what's typically spent out of that fund versus what would be needed moving forward. If there are no questions on office supplies, I'll jump to criminal investigations, which is a similar small reduction, again tied to looking at the last 5 years of expenditures out of that fund and what is a better reflection moving forward. If no questions on that, vehicle fuel and gasoline, that fluctuates obviously based on the price of fuel, based on world circumstances, which seem to be ever evolving these days. But in looking at both the fuel and the oil and lubricants fund right below it, neither appear to be out of range of like a 5-year study of fluctuation where that would be expected not to cover it outside of some wild event where fuel goes through the roof.
Right. I think I do have some concerns about oil and lubricants, but it seems to be staying within range. Fortunately, we have our own mechanics here, but I'm hearing some people paying $100 now for an oil change.
Oh my. Yeah, I'm not entirely familiar with the method in which they purchase it, but
Yeah.
that definitely helps. If there is no questions on that, you will notice an increase in the general expense fund from 2025 to the 2026 amount, and that $5,000 is tied to a once every 5-year purchase of emergency medical supplies for like our trauma bags.
Yeah.
So
You have to refresh.
Israeli bandages, things like that for clotting, for a serious injury, firearms injury, that kind of thing, do have a 5-year shelf life. And so at the end of those 5 years, they turn into training supplies for staff to get practice with, to hopefully never have to use. But that's sort of the life cycle of those supplies and where that increase came from, which is expected to be a 1 year increase. Any questions on that?
Just always amazed the creativity. Like you said, those are being used for training supplies, so it's not like at the end of the shelf life, it's just going away. And yeah,
Usually try and find some positive use for it.
right. And usually you'll be the first one to show up. Most often show up on a scene before medical help would arrive. So
Cut yourself shaving, take some of the clot powder.
yeah.
If nothing else on that, we'll jump down to ammunition and related supplies. This covers a wide variety. Our taser, training cartridges, any replacements we need for duty issued tasers. It covers items like our less lethal, as well as our firearms that are in the vehicles. There is a $1,000 increase from last year into this year. That is tied directly to the replacement of two of the rifles, patrol rifles that are in the cars. Our firearms crew was forward thinking enough that they purchased suppressors for the barrels, which has been increasingly realized through studies. Even the shooting this year down at the York Hospital, that shooting one of those rifles indoors was causing significant ear damage, not only to officers, but to staff in the hospital, staff or citizens present where that may be used, unfortunately. So the rifles tend to allow those already purchased items to be added on so that they're integrated into the fleet. And the old rifles are then traded back in for cost savings. So that's where that comes from. If you have any questions, I'm happy to field those. And then community relations supplies. I did about a 33% reduction to that fund from last year into this year. That in no way reflects a less dedication to community events, but more that there was a significant increase in that fund in the last couple years that was more than was needed for the purposes. So I think we can continue to be the presence that we are at community events and continue to have handouts for the kiddos at a lesser cost. So that was the change there.
So everyone that shows up to a community event still gets a badge.
Still badges, still stickers.
Plush dogs
still
will be available
plush
for-
dogs. That's the one thing we have to ration, but they do come out.
Those are prizes. The plush dogs are prizes.
I could use a badge.
Sticker, plastic, or metal?
If I may, since we're going down that just very quickly, does this also include any of the firearms locks that have been made available?
Oh, good question.
Or is that in a different?
I think we get those through a federal program, so I don't think we're
Okay.
purchasing those separately, but we do still have those on hand.
Perfect, thank you. No need to
Nice.
flag it, just wanted to ask. Thanks.
Moving to the next fund, vehicle parts. Again, no changes in this. I did a 5-year study, and although it's an unpredictable sort of fund, that has shown to be adequate across the last 5 years. So I wouldn't see a need to increase or decrease that at this time.
Okay.
Recommended anyway. If no questions there, we can move to computers and IT. Is this going in order for everybody, by the way? I'm going off a spreadsheet.
believe so.
That's the websites.
Oh,
If I end up somewhere off in the weeds, please let me know. There was a reduction in this fund. Let's see the breakdown. overall, there was a reduction in this fund by about $16,000 or $17,000. There was a consultant fee that we were paying for the new report management system that payments will be completed in 2025, and so it's not a recurring item into next year, as well as a couple other changes with our budgeted funds for airtime and IT services for the patrol vehicles from State College Borough, just a deeper dive to realize what was needed versus what was budgeted. So that's where the changes lower came. There was, I believe, one increase across the whole fund, and that was for our Power DMS management system for accreditation. And that change reflects, it was being billed the first week of January. And so I requested a 15-month quote for the next year so that we could push that out from having to do it right after New Year's and get it into March or April, where trying to get things approved and signed in the first week of the year. So that's really where that came from, and then it should return back to its original amount. Any questions on any computer or IT related items? Next one is a fund near and dear to me, the Digital Forensic Lab Fund. There is a small increase from 2025 into 2026 that's directly tied to increases for our two major pieces of software used in the lab coming from the companies. The numbers reflected in this fund total does not factor in, obviously, that Patton Township in its joint venture with our forensics lab does pay for half of the software costs tied into this fund.
Okay.
So I think that 13, almost 14,000 comes from Patton Township on that. Any questions on the digital forensic? All right. Batteries, there was a reduction in this. It would be a 1-year recommended reduction, and that's simply tied to we have a CIP purchases in the budget for new radios and new AEDs in 2026, so not necessarily, hopefully, a need to replace batteries in brand new radios or AEDs.
Okay. Yep.
And that's at least 1 year. It could be 2 or 3 years. I have to just take a look at how battery performance is happening going into next year, but there should not be a need to replace those batteries, and that's where that change comes from. If no questions on that, I'll move to DNA testing. This has been a part of our budget since I started with the police department. It's for those rare instances where we would get a homicide or some other major criminal event where we would need additional lab testing for DNA, for gunshot residue, maybe a firearm study for a major event like a homicide or something to that effect. The hope is to not have to use it, but if one of those events happens, that's what that fund is earmarked for. And it's separated out just to keep the criminal investigations fund from being bloated year after year. No questions there. We have other agency DUI charges under 317. That is tied to the our agency manages the county-wide traffic and alcohol grants. And so other agencies that will work that state grant overtime will get reimbursed through the fund that all the revenue comes into the township and then is dispersed that way. So that's where that expenditure is tied to. If no questions, I will jump down to communications. These are cell phone reimbursements for officers to utilize their phones two-factor authentication to have email access on the move, to be able to call victims and complainants on police calls while they're out in the field versus having to come back to station and make those phone calls. And that has no change, I think. No, I have a small reduction. I think it was no change. A mistake. The same allotment of people. If no questions on the phones, we can go to radio maintenance. You might ask why that hasn't changed with new radios coming next year. It's more to cover the gap as to when those radios are actually purchased and brought in service. We're obviously actively not trying to repair radios that are getting replaced, but if it's something minor that'll help continue its service into the new radios, we've done that, volume button changes, things like that, so where we keep it enough operational until the new ones come in. So hope not to spend it, but that's why that has remained the same. If no questions there, we'll jump into travel, lodging, and meals. This tied to the variety of training that we send officers to for a myriad of different reasons that you can see through here. If it is out-of-town training, it would cover things like flights, although there's not a lot of places we're flying to. Most of it would be driving within a couple of hours. Hotel stays if they're there for a few nights, and then collective bargaining agreement food allowances for each day that they're at the trainings. I will leave it to you all if there's any specific trainings you have a question about, and I'm happy to answer anything you might have.
I wouldn't have anything, a lot of these are gonna be tied into the profession, keeping the credentials and our accreditation and whatnot, so,
I would say that the food allowance in the hotels are kind of tied to a worst case scenario, since it's hard sometimes to predict where that will be. Is it gonna be in a city versus a town?
right.
So typically this is a fund where what's budgeted for hotels and food, the actual training happens, it comes in well below what's budgeted.
Okay.
I've found people to be pretty respectful of that.
Yeah.
They're not booking 5-star hotels and the
No
like.
Ruth's Chris as opposed to Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah. I had an officer recently attend a training and his food receipts were like Sheetz hot dogs. I'm like, wow. That's not the route I would go, but to each their own.
Well, they have stepped up their game. They're a little more gourmet than just throwing in foil with some ketchup and onions.
Walmart comes to town.
But hey, there's money in the budget if they want to just go get Wawa.
Step above. The next fund then would be advertising and printing. There was a small reduction in this fund tied just to, again, that historical 5-year study of what we're actually spending that money towards versus what we need. And I will pair that with outside vehicle repairs. Again, it's very nice. The maintenance staff at the township has always been highly qualified and good at what they do, preventative maintenance especially. So it is, the few times we have to go to an outside vendor for a repair for a vehicle not under warranty. And I looked across the last 5 years again and saw room for a small adjustment downwards where we're not putting ourselves in a situation where funds would run short outside of something totally unpredictable. If no questions on that, I'll move to dues, subscriptions, and memberships. Not really much of any change. I think a very small downward revision. This fund is covering things like PHEs of police memberships, legal updates for staff, a couple different fees tied to the accreditation of the department, whether that's the accreditation fee itself or PLEAC. We have some car seat safety recertifications built in here that is, it's not new to the department, it's just new for it to be line itemed out here versus elsewhere. And a McLaughlin membership that was new, something we tested out in 2025. Specifically, we've seen an increase in frauds involving, I want to say Bitcoin, but I mean cryptocurrency, where the fraudsters are convincing people to go to ATMs or to make transactions through cryptocurrency, and McLaughlin has staff members trained on and access to a very expensive piece of software that allows them to sort of help our investigations in tracking the movement across blockchain. So it's been something that will help us have at least a few success cases, hopefully, with some of these people getting scammed out of large amounts of money. So that's one of the new items on there. But happy to answer any questions if there are any on dues or subscriptions otherwise. Our next up will be contracted services. There were some changes to this. There was an increase of just under $2,000 that's tied specifically to the central booking center, which all the participating agencies fund any overages versus like their revenue versus expenses. So they'll come up with at the end of a year based on usage by each agency, an estimated number for the following year. And that our increase was not substantial, but that's what it's reflected through. Moving through the rest of the fund, I don't believe there were any major changes for the upcoming year or new items added. Just some small tweaks here and there, but happy to answer questions if anybody has any. All right, if not, the other end of training, not the hotels, travel, or lodging, but the fees to attend the trainings themselves. You will see an increase here in this fund of just shy of $6,000. And you'll see some new items in here that you might not have seen in recent years. The majority of this, the change is going to be tied to, we've had a couple instructors retire from the department in the last handful of years where eventually they need to be replaced with, we like to have two. So that if somebody retires or has some kind of sudden injury or medical emergency, that there's somebody else who can guide our staff through required yearly trainings, whether that's defensive tactics, things that state requires that we carry. But the majority of that is going to come from a cell phone training class for someone to be able to operate our lab and keep as a backup to, right now it's just myself handling the lab duties. This would allow for somebody else to be able to jump in there. And so that's where a big chunk of this comes from. I budgeted obviously for the whole amount of the class, but there is an arrangement with the district attorney's office to fund half of that. So full amounts budgeted. It's an expensive class, but it's a good class. It'll be good for the department, and half of it should be reimbursed. But happy to answer any other questions. I just wanted to share some insight. All right. The next up would be academy training. Under the academy training, you'll see a small tweak from the 2025 number. We do have, obviously not nothing's guaranteed in this world, but what is expected to be 2 retirements, end of career retirements in 2026. So we've kept in the budget, not knowing if the candidates who replace them will or will not need Act 120 training. So may spend it, may not. We have adjusted some of I adjusted some of the numbers based on just a better reflection of cost, or worst case scenario cost, I should say. Similarly, I haven't had an academy attendee yet spend their full meal allowance all day, every day. Nor do I ever hope to spend the whole lodging allowance, but there's academies all over the state, and a lot of times the academy we send them to depends on when they're hired. So lodging prices kind of fluctuate. So a great example is one academy might be $11,000 for lodging for 5.5 months, and another might be 15 or 16. So this reflects a worst case scenario, but a pretty minimal change from last year, and happy to answer questions if you have any additional. All right, the next up would be actuarial, payroll processing, and broker fees are more the finance department than the police department, but I would defer to Todd if you have any questions on any.
We're going to cover that later in the fiduciary.
And then the last is the capital improvement. Obviously, we went through this. Feels like not that long ago. We sat down and went through capital improvement. We had some discussions on some of these items. I'll just kind of briefly go through to see if there's anything that has changed since those last discussions. We are moving along with our records management system. It's in a place where it's expected that payments for that would start either late this year potentially, or for sure next year. There is a grant in place through PCCD that is expected to fund the entirety of year 1 and year 2. As we all know, no grants are ever guaranteed in life, so that's where that $65,000 is. This is the CIP increase from 25 to 26 is significant. We went through a bunch of these items, but I'm happy to discuss any of them.
Yes, Mr. Heller.
I was just looking to flag the 3 patrol vehicles, and I guess at the end of tonight we'll get to the reasoning for that.
If there's no questions for me, that brings me to the end of my sheet.
All right. Do another round of any questions, or otherwise we got the flag for the cars.
Yep. Sorry.
I was gonna say, since it's just the cars, should we just kind of get your reasoning and take note? I don't
sure.
know if the manager wanted to.
It would be very quick. I mean, if I were to say anything, it would just be 30 seconds. My statement would be, if you had to pick one, which one would it be? And that would be something that we can discuss then when we come back to the flagged items at this Thursday.
Yeah. Huh.
So when we discussed cars in CIP, we talked about 5 years versus 6 years. I think that was one of the items that came up, and I said I'm always happy to share if there's a car that could be pushed a year, knowing that potentially that would mean it could snowball effect, I guess I should say.
Well,
in this case, this is the snowball year. We don't normally have 3 cars, so I did do a study prior to this meeting of our fleet. Car 14 is by far the oldest car in our fleet, or 12, sorry, not 14. And I wouldn't recommend moving that if at all possible. Car 1, the pickup truck, similarly, is a cycle down vehicle in the township. Typically, the plan in place is the police truck goes to the ordinance officer, and the ordinance truck goes into general township use. So car 11, if you were to move a car back a year, would be the car to do based on my study. It is in the window of mileage and performance where we could get another year out of that vehicle if that's what the board feels is appropriate.
Okay, cool, thank you. So we can talk more then.
Yep.
Do that. Awesome, I appreciate
Okay.
the context.
Sure. I wanted to be respectful. I didn't know if we had Officer Lewis the whole night or, but
As long as you need me.
Yeah, and
I'm good with that.
One
Whatever
note.
the manager says.
if we could have a car 54 at some point, that would be awesome.
Car 54.
Nobody knows the show? Car 54, where are you?
No.
Sorry, disregard. Next.
Okay.
Next. Who's next?
All right.
Apologies. Well, right? No.
Let's
We're
see.
gonna move to planning and zoning. I'm
Yep.
gonna cover that. Section 6.7, page 275. Is everybody ready?
All right.
Set, go. So we have salary and wages, and we're becoming more staffed now, so that's the projection for 2026. Office supplies, we have a small projection for 2025, but we budgeted about half of what we did in 2025 for office supplies, and some of those are just for new items for the new staff that come on board. General expense remained about the same. Copiers and IT remained about the same. Professional services, it's just the expert testimony. If we need somebody if we call on somebody as an expert, the recording of any meetings that had to be recorded by the
Stenographer?
stenographer, that's it, yeah, that's it. Communications just covers cell phones for the director, and there is a line in there for potential iPad connections, and that's we just left it in there because it was in last year, and we're still determining that with the new staff, and the directors rather do as well, so. Travel, lodging, and meals, we have 2 conferences for the director to go to. And then we also have a little various travel for training because we have new staff and we don't know what credentials we want them to have and where they're gonna go, so just a small allowance for that. Some of the dues and memberships, you can see that there's a lot that were removed. Anyone with a dots in the middle are essentially not paid in 2025, and we didn't carry it. There's only a few items that were carried over for 2026. Contracted services, the comprehensive plan, we carried over from 2025. And so you can see the note there that we have 50,000 in, and we plan on doing 25,000 in 2027. The application process amount, that was last year, and then down it's 460. These are all the registration fees for the training. There's a new item for passport access, and that is a database provided by the American Planning Association. That is just access for a wealth of information. That's something new. And then we have a miscellaneous training for registrations and certifications of the staff. And those are being developed, and the planning directors determining what their needs are in that area. And then we have the COG planning and the metro planning. They actually went down, well, about the same, 78,000, 75,000, 54,000, went up to 55,000. And then we had the same land and housing donation that we had the prior year, and comprehensive strategic economic development plan should be done in 2025, so there's nothing carried forward. And then there's another placeholder for township economic development and initiatives, and $3,000 for Pine Grove Mills for the farmers market. there any questions on relatively simple budget? Okay, no time, no.
I don't see any cars, so I'm okay.
But could they use a car?
No.
They are looking at
They
land.
downcycle. Yeah, they get the hand-me-down.
So going on, I would like to take a little aside, not really aside, but I have a whole department for parks. So instead of doing the park improvement fund and Tudig Park, we could do the parks department, and that has both of them in it, and then we won't have to do those later. Last year, there was not a parks department set up in the budget, so is that reasonable to everybody?
Yeah, sounds.
Okay, fantastic. And that's section 6.8,
Okay, thank you.
284.
Next page over.
Right, and I think James and I'll be his backup. If he,
Sure. Okay. I'll go through I guess we'll start, just go in order here. Township Park operating expenses for just the general parks, 2,500. Park operating supplies this is in Tudig Trust, so for Tudig Park, 500. Butterfly Gardens, 2,000. Electricity, $2,000. Coming back into non-Tudig trust funds, looking at the parks budget. The park surveying program, $10,000. Playground and safety contingency, you might recall we removed that line this year and replaced that with 2 lines down. The parks maintenance program, capital cost, parks and recreation, that was in order to support any of the amenities that are in the parks that traditionally don't have an item dedicated for benches, water fountains, things of that nature. The idea here was if you have to replace all the benches or a lot of benches at once, it's pretty costly. So the idea is to have the $25,000, replace individual amenities as needed, and then retain that savings, whatever we don't spend, into the next year. Hopefully build up a little bit of a fund balance there that can be used to offset the cost of the larger replacement items when necessary, such as the playground replacements or other of the larger items that tend to be a little bit more expensive. Also parking lot seal coating, $11,000. Autumn wood improvements, $250,000. This is the Kaboom grant. This is a 50% match from DCNR and Kaboom. The rest of it, hopefully we will, with all luck, we will get all of the our match as an in-kind match from volunteers and the community members to replace the playground at Autumnwood Park this coming August. Tudig Park improvements, this is the carryover for the playground replacement project. If you've been to Tudig Park recently, you may have noticed that township staff has removed the play equipment on the younger toddlers playground nearest to the basketball court. That project has been ongoing throughout the year. This money is to carry it over. It's likely that it'll fall into 2026. But we're working on that as we speak. The big one here is Cecil Irvin Park Phase 2 development. So in total, it's about $1.1 million. 50% of that is funded via grant match through DCNR and the Land Water Conservation Fund. That one's been ongoing for a while. 2026 is the year we're identifying would be the year that it actually, we get a shovel in the ground. We're still on pace for that, still on schedule for that. We're still working through the design phase on things, but that's the big one. Let's see here. Dog park maintenance, 800. Rental house maintenance. This is going back into the Tudic Park or Tudic Trust expenditures. Rental house maintenance, barn maintenance, implement shed maintenance. All of those line items are listed there. That's pretty much it.
Yes, Ms. Strickland.
I don't know if this is necessarily a flag, but on the parks maintenance program and capital costs, I just wondered if we could expand on the notes in there so that it reflects that it's going to be kind of a sinking fund or a buildup of a fund. Because right now it just looks like it's $25,000 per year for things that come up. So I'm just wondering if we can expand on the notes to really explain to.
That's a great idea. We can refer to it as what we would call committed funds, which is separate from restricted funds. And so we can have it committed for repairs and list out some of what those examples could look like.
Yeah, and if the intention here is to build up the fund so that this is not, the budget really for, smaller capital items every year, because that's what I'm hearing is this is really intended to build up. So if that's the intent, if we can indicate that
Absolutely.
in there, so.
Yeah.
And at some point you'll reach a threshold, you'll
Right.
maybe even identify that in next year's CIP, like where is it that you want to be, and what are you kind of planning out to take out of that per year, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea because even a lot of times after these budgets have been adopted, we'll sometimes get resident questions, and it is kind of nice because if you do think there should be a note in there, sometimes it is best to consider putting a note in there. So if it does come back around, it's like, oh, that's what that was about.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd
Yes,
like to
Ms.
flag the
Stevens.
seal coating.
Seal coating for the parking lots.
Yes. And I have a question about the autumn wood kaboom thing. We are committed to that, right? That is something that we've already committed to.
We
Okay.
are committed to it with the date, I believe.
Yes.
And we can get back to you. It's in August of next year. And ultimately, our reimbursements are dependent on the volunteers that show up to assist with the construction of the playground and participate throughout the design process. So it's a very community-oriented, community-focused design process and day of event.
August 15th.
August 15th. Thanks, James.
Any others? All right. Then, I was gonna say, did James have anything else, or?
That's it for parks.
Oh, so that was everything for parks. Okay.
So we can move on to the special revenue groups?
Yep.
Okay, so these are the actual funds, and some of these we're covering because they're not anywhere else in the department, right? So that's the reason. So streetlight assessment funds, I want to I'm going to scroll down here on it's section 5.2, page 6.4. Down to the right detail. And so essentially this is we assess the residents, and then we pay the electric bills for the streetlights. So you can see that there's an increase from 18,000 to 19,500. That's due to we acquired additional streetlights on West College Avenue in 2025. So it's just anticipation of increased electric costs. And there is a small maintenance fund for a few repairs that happens occasionally. I think it's happened a few times since I've been here. But they were talking about the fund balance, I'll roll back up to that, just. We're showing interest of $850 on the money, and there's an ending fund balance we have of $7,000. So there's not a lot of extra sitting in there that, so there's no need to change or increase or decrease the assessment, in my opinion.
I do have a question about so everything that I've been hearing is that the electricity costs are gonna be up the next couple of years. Did you factor in that sort of chatter? Or is this just sort of a formula you used?
I didn't add especially an increase because of it. I added an increase because of the additional lights. And so and also it is slightly higher. My projection for 2025 is a little bit less than it was, a little bit less than the budget. So there's not a grand formula that I factored into it more. So.
All right. I just wanted to be really conservative there.
Yeah, good point. And yeah.
And there's enough fund balance if it does happen to be 24,000 instead of 21.5. There's enough to cover it, and then we would adjust in 2027. But I don't want to over predict and.
Right.
Any other questions on the streetlight fund? Okay, we'll move on to the hydrant fund, section 5.3, page 72. And the manager had that in her transmittal letter about reducing the hydrant fund assessment to 0, use fund balance for 2026. So that would take it from 30 cents to 0 cents. So you can see on the fund balance, we still have interest, a lower amount of interest of 3,200 I'm predicting because we have less money in the account, and 0 from 185,000 in 2025 to 0. And so our services and charges are 126,000. That's the hydrant fee for all 4 quarters. It's predictable. That would leave us an ending fund balance of $63,000 at the end of 2026.
Nothing? All right, we don't have anything.
Okay, the agricultural preservation fund, section 5.5 is page 87. And there's a very small fund balance in this account of $6,000. There's I'm just gonna scroll down. There's one farm identified, and then we have an allocation for farm number 1 and number 2 on the list for 2026. So the Strauss Farm is identified with a $6,697 payment, and then there's another $17,000 for a total of $23,000. And then there's just a transfer from general fund to cover those costs, keep the fund balance similar. Any questions?
No.
And next we have the Regional Capital Recreation Fund. This fund is used for regional parks, the payments to COG, so we already did see this number before, but the number is $145,540, and so those are just quarterly payments to COG. And it did go down from 2025.
Well, when was this?
Yeah, I reduced the interest earnings some because we're going to use more of that account. Yes, Mr.
So I just had a question on this. So this is the pool and park debt. Is that
I
right?
believe so, yes.
Okay. So do we know what the balance of that is?
For the full debt?
Yeah, and because we rolled the park debt into that, and we used to have a little
Yeah.
chart that would show us our payments. So I'm just wondering if
We
that
can itemize it and do a breakdown, unless Todd has that.
I don't have it offhand. We do get it for the audit, to put in the audit for 2024, right? So we would capture it again in 2025. But I don't have
We can bring it in.
Yeah, I don't need it right now. I just want to, I didn't know if I missed it in here, so it's helpful to have when you're looking at this fund in particular. So, because I think that's the only thing.
The good news is the pool debt's soon to be paid off. So
Exactly, yes,
It'll just
yeah.
be park debt, but yeah, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have that information
Right.
brought in or brought back into for awareness.
And then I think, so this, and just this is for the narrative. So this one this was the Lesser Hubbard Fund, I think. Am I
it. It says at the top.
Yes, it does. It has it marked in there.
Yeah, and so I think this is different than the, that was not for the Whitehall. Am I remembering this correctly?
Now that I remember, I had got a public comment on this that took me down a very deep rabbit hole of actually looking at every budget we've ever published, and I think based on my conversation with that individual, and I think I even consulted with you, Lisa, as well as even the former manager, and I think there might be a need for maybe a little bit of clarity in that opening narrative, because it looks like it's for Whitehall Road Regional Park, and then it says it's used to account for regional park projects. So just kind of something that maybe not give the impression that it's exclusive to Whitehall Road Regional Park.
Right, because that wasn't
Yeah.
tied to the Lesser Hubbard.
Yeah. So in the budget, I
It,
believe
it's also
it was-
evolved from what I determined.
Yeah, several years ago, it was dedicated for I think it was park debt, or yes, it was park debt. And so memory is a little foggy
Yeah.
right now, but I know what you're referring to,
Yeah.
and we can bring language back into it to bring some awareness if the board is interested about the history, but it has expanded and it does look different today based on what it once was. But we can bring that historical perspective into the narrative.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, thanks. I appreciate that because it wasn't that agreement.
Yeah. And it was interesting because Whitehall was in that back pre-construction, and that kind of also changed from a couple budget years based on just the fluidity of how Whitehall Road Regional Park
I
got through
understand the
construction.
history.
So, yeah.
For some people, it's very closely connected and tied to how we have evolved from where we once were. So we can bring that language back in for some historical perspective.
Super.
Thank you.
Okay to proceed?
On this fund.
Okay, the Pine Grove Bill Streetlight Fund, section 5.10, page 138. This fund has not had any activity other than we earned some interest on the money in the account. So we have $700 budgeted for interest revenue and 0 expenses. Any questions on that? Okay, we're gonna skip the Park Improvement Fund because that was covered under the Parks Department. Liquid Fuels is underneath the Public Works. So the Police Pension Fund, section 5.13, page 167. Essentially in here, this is a fiduciary fund, so it's out of our control. There is some interest budgeted from the cash accounts we have at the bank. The intergovernmental revenues would be the minimum MMO, and the 110,000 is the contributions from the officers. The personnel services is just the payments to the retirees, and other services and charges are the pension fees, quarterly pension fees. There's no questions, I'll move on to the municipal pension fund. This is our 401. This is also a fiduciary fund, so we don't have a lot of control over it. The $400 is just interest on our local accounts. The intergovernment revenues are the remaining of that and the special assessments together is the 10% that we pay the employees. The 136 is split out because it's part of the Act 205. And other services and charges is the 401, 457 fees.
Yes, Mr. Allen.
Nothing, that was just me going, sorry, it's really quiet in here.
Okay.
I will reserve my,
Request for elevator music.
yeah, something.
Or change up the white noise. I hear the HVAC, but
So we can move on to flagged items if you wish.
okay. Yeah,
It's up to you, Chair.
trying to think. So, yeah, I guess we're gonna look at some flagged items from last time. I was gonna defer to James, since I know they're kind of limited on time in the next meeting, just kind of give them an opportunity to have anything that they want to address or have us, well, at least have us clarify so we can at least get them all the information to prepare for either, now or next time, but whenever works best in your schedule there.
Yeah, so I provided written responses to the flagged items for Public Works. I'm happy to answer any questions on them, but that's basically where we were at in terms of reviewing those. A couple items that I'll highlight here would be just a couple of things that have happened recently since I drafted this. 2 radios this year actually just had to be replaced. So that leaves, there were 3 remaining radios, so we're down to 1 radio that needs to be replaced. These are radios that are 15 years old, but they're interconnected with the Center County Emergency Services, so it's all linked together and along with the other Public Works departments so that there can be seamless communication in the field. So that's where the radios are. They've been aging, and when they fail, they can't really be replaced. It's not a model that's used anymore. So the money that was there was, rather than replacing it all at once, to be more cost effective, it was broken down for about 3 a year. They cost $2,000 a piece. Like I said, there were 3 remaining. 2 of them were just purchased, so we only have 1 left that needs to be replaced.
Question about the radios.
You're next.
Sorry. So we contract with PennDOT to do some of the state roads like 26, et cetera, right? Can that be sort of bumped into that as part of the cost of doing that for PennDOT?
We haven't negotiated that as part of the agreements or contracts that we have with PennDOT. So we have the agility agreement, and we have the exchange for plowing Route 26 for salt brine. And not to say that it couldn't be a consideration for discussion, but those renewal contracts or renewal agreements are rather seamless as we just continue to do the same thing over and over. I will note that it's in collaboration with the police department radio replacements, and so our public works department and police department, I believe the lifespan is the same for both departments, and so it's an opportunity for us to do that replacement. I think 2 simultaneously or within the same year of Patton Township also doing their radio replacement. So it's advantageous for us to do it in the manner of which we've initiated the coordination just for the planning and preparation. But I like the suggested approach, right? Which is, can we start to negotiate some additional benefits with PennDOT for some of the arrangements that are already in place? And sure, I think that's something that with our new interim public works director, we could certainly set as the goals for consideration. But I would say there's probably that on the table as well as many other things. And so I look forward to seeing James being able to get an assessment of the landscape of needs, wants, and desires, and figuring out what we might be able to negotiate.
Great, thank you.
But for now, I would say that those agreements, believe we have another year of that agreement in place before it expired, so it wouldn't be something we'd be able to negotiate for this upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Your thoughts?
Oh, I
Mr.
was just
Heller?
going to say with the radios, I appreciate the additional explanation about the Center County Emergency Services and 911, because that does elevate in my mind the quality of the radios and their necessity, as opposed to simply, communication between vehicles or operators. That's a very different scenario. So, thank you.
I was gonna say, I think I've seen there's sometimes instances where public works departments are called on emergency calls,
Makes perfect
depending
sense
on what,
the cost
what's
now.
involved. And I know you had mentioned about cell phones in the last meeting,
Yeah,
but
that's-
I kind of just looking back from my experience in scouting, you want to always be prepared, and sometimes a cell phone might work, and then if it doesn't, you want to have a backup all the time. So, and it's crazy that they're $2,000, but I worked for a company one time where we handed people $2,000 phones to do their job, and I can't tell you how many forklifts, drops and falls. Stuff happens when you're working heavy blue collar work with technology. So life happens.
The other items, I'll just touch on the highlights here. So microsurfacing, that money is in liquid fuels, so that's separate from the general fund. Cutting that wouldn't really impact the general fund either way, but that's the recommended amount that we've kind of using the program that we've used for the last, I think, 20 or 30 years. So that kind of falls in line with that. But there was there's no real benefit unless there's an adjustment to the programming in liquid fuels. So I would recommend keeping that. And the same thing with the guide rail repairs. It could be reduced, but that's also in liquid fuels. The West Chestnut pipe repair was one that was identified as originally there was a design that was done by staff, anticipating it being a much bigger, more complex project than it was. Township staff had fixed it in the field simply by adjusting the berm to redirect the water. But the materials, the township already has the materials. This item was really for construction. The design's done, so it can be done in-house by staff if it's necessary. But so far, the work that was already done took care of the issue. So it's probably something that it may come up over time, but it's not something that has to be addressed today. At least at this point in time, and if it is, the materials are here, so it's really just a matter of staff time to perform the construction. The urban forestry contracted services, those are specific to, it's a little bit of a variable. It's not easily identifiable right from the jump of what you're going to need. There were some expenditures of almost $50,000 in 2024, but 2025 projected zero. So this is like large scale removals, things that we don't have the equipment for or we don't have the expertise to perform. So those occur time to time depending on what the project is. Sometimes we don't know until we get into it. So that's what that allocation's for. On the engineering design, I just wanted to point out that, again, those budgeted allocations were a senior engineer level consultant hourly rate performing all of the design work on all the projects. There's a lot of stuff that has already been done in-house or could be done in-house in the future. But this is something that we've regularly done in the past for whether that's for specialties or specific skill sets, specific project needs. We've always had these allocations available to some degree. This year, looking into 2026 with an adjustment in staffing, removing the engineer tech and the stormwater engineer position, it kind of offsets what those costs are. So that staffing allocation kind of offsets what is done in the design, on the design side of it with a consultant. I did want to, I know there were questions about the bike path mobility study, just pointing out here, and there's two separate items in design referencing a bike path. One is the Science Park Road bike path crossing. The other is the Blue Course Drive Clinton Avenue bike path design. That's from the Northland Mobility Study. It's listed out in the CIP. I took the text that was in the CIP and put it directly into my notes here to describe what it is, but also to call out the timeline for it. So really the first part of it that we would be doing in 2026 is the preliminary design, and that's really to support grant funding opportunities so that, when we're applying for these things, the grantor has the ability to see what the project is and get a rough idea of what the costs are based on the design. So that's the difference between those two projects. Street trees, worked with the township arborist on this, or the urban forester, I should say, on this. One thing to note is that 2 years ago, this was an item that was cut by about 50%, I think down to $20,000. The issue here was that there's really two different types of trees that are purchased or tree replacement. Per code, if the township removes any tree, it has to be replaced with a tree that has a 2-inch caliper on it. So they need to be a little bit more mature trees that are raised in the nursery, so they cost a little bit more. Those are used primarily in residential neighborhoods and developments where there are existing street trees. So it's not so out of place. It fits in, with the rest of the trees that are there. These get removed for lots of different reasons. It could be because there's other work. It could be because they were damaged. It could be because they didn't survive, had an issue. It could be a lot of different things. Could be run over by a car. Those get replaced. So really, because of the timing of getting those trees and getting the species and the number of trees, having the proper amount budgeted is crucial in the timeline for getting those trees. The remaining trees that are in the budget, they're 50 bare root trees. Those are a lot cheaper. Those get used in non-residential and undeveloped areas. They might be specifically identified for areas for new plantings. They also might be areas that maybe had trees, they were removed, but they're not in a neighborhood, your quintessential street tree. So Those are, again, a lot cheaper. But basically, the allocation that's there meets the needs of the identified replacement trees for 2026. We'll take a little bit of a look at what that looks like going forward with the addition of the arborists under the urban forester, and see if that makes sense going forward or what we can do there. Sycamore Drive turnaround. This is actually a project that's really a safety measure. The road is very narrow and there's not a lot of room to turn around. There have been multiple trucks that have gotten stuck and had to be pulled out due to snow, mud, those types of things. The brush and leaf collection has to be done by driving the length of the road in reverse. So it's not the safest situation. It's something that clearly Public Works has done and made work over the past few years, but it's something that has to, it is a safety issue that should be dealt with sooner than later. So that's what this was for. Also, the township hadn't done this original widening because a landowner was in negotiation for an easement, didn't get the easement at first, went back and got the easement. So now the township has the easement, and the landowner is kind of expecting, hey, I gave you this easement. Are you doing this or what? So that's what that one is. PW 3-19, the international truck. This is pretty much a daily use type of truck. It's got a couple of things going on with it. One being the construction of the truck is specific double C channel construction. It's known for getting salt in it and rusting. The experience has been it's not going to pass inspection here very soon. It's already 15 years old. The expected lifespan was 12 to 13 years. So we've gotten as much as we can out for now. And so the other experience has been there was another vehicle in the fleet that had a max force engine. It went down. The cost to repair that max force engine was $25,000. They're known for chronic reliability issues. This truck has the max force engine. So there's a lot of things compounding here that should this truck get taken out of commission or we're down, then you're looking at replacement, rentals, lower service levels, those types of things. Yeah. It's possible to stretch it out. It's running. It's not. It's not running. But it is something that has to be dealt with eventually. And it's just if it goes down, it's one of those things where we don't really have an alternative. That one gets used all the time. The stormwater pipe video cleaning and lining. I tried to include as much as I could here. I took some of the narrative from the CIP, but just pointing out that to do the lining, you need to do the video and the cleaning first. They kind of go hand in hand. And really the benefit here is that as the corrugated metal pipe that's in the ground now, as that disintegrates and rusts and ultimately will eventually collapse, the lining replaces that pipe without having to pull it out of the ground, open up the earth or anything to get in there and replace it. So you avoid all those costs. And the lifespan on the liner is 50 to 100 years, considerably less expensive than if you have to replace that pipe whenever it ultimately fails. So once you put the liner in, the pipe can disintegrate and fall apart on its own, and it doesn't impact anything. Your liner is good. So that's the benefit, is you're spending a little bit now to avoid the catastrophe later. It's possible that you get years where you don't have any replacements or any failures of pipe, but there's also a possibility where you have multiple pipes fail and you're on the hook for a couple million there to get them replaced. So to date, 40% of the pipe has been videoed and cleaned, and 18% of that has been lined. So we don't have a ton of it done. It is a long-term project, but those were the amounts that were recommended. I think there's a number in here that says based on current pricing, to complete the lining of the existing CMP over the next 20 years, we would need approximately $663,000 current year dollars to complete all the lining. So that's that. Those are the big ones. I included some other notes on some of the smaller items there, but there wasn't anything really beyond sort of the obvious on those ones. So happy to answer any questions or take any feedback, or to just,
Ms. Strickland will be recognized.
Thanks. I just wanted to go back to the liquid fuels fund. So I guess it was in 2024, there was a big fund balance, and so we decided to spend that down. And so it is good to see that the expenditures are much more closely matching the revenues, and there's still a healthy fund balance in there. So there are no intergovernmental transfer. We don't fund this at all this year from the general fund.
No, we get money from the state based on road mileage, and so that's always been the opportunity and challenge, is that we're restricted to certain expenditures because it's liquid fuels money, so it's restricted. And so we do try to creatively identify expenditures that we can move from maybe the TIF or from the general fund and move those expenditures into liquid fuels fund. We have done that before, and I will share, just recently we did, and the auditor said, this is not going to be an observation, but some auditors would ding you for this. And so we carefully walk that line on what expenditures we can put into liquid fuels. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we are trying to always creatively assess what will be approved by the auditor and how we can take some of our expenditures and move into liquid fuels.
Well, that answers my next question, because I know liquid fuels is, we're given that, and
Right.
it's limited as to what we can spend on. But we have also added money from the general fund into this account and kind of spent more than what was allocated from our.
We've tried not to do that in the last 2 years.
And so that's why I'm
It
asking.
took the first year, I think James and I got in and we realized a lot more about this fund because we had seen a lot of transfers into liquid fuels and it was not necessary, to your point. And so we've not done that as of recent, but we do.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
that's good. I mean, that is how this fund, in my reading, should be, is that it's dedicated to that. And my other point was going to be to Matt's point here was, there are some different things you could use it for, and I know we do that. So if you don't want to, but we are still, going over in expenditures a bit here. So if there was interest in, keeping that fund balance a little bit higher so that we can use more of it next year, because you don't know if liquid fuels will go down. And
It's true.
and so, if you wanted to maybe look at some of the other things that are outside of the microservicing program that are paid for by liquid fuels, reduce that, the difference there between your expenditure and your revenue, then you keep up the microservicing, but you have maybe a little bit more of a buffer for next year. I mean, it really could go down. So and since our microservicing is based on that number, so.
Yeah, I think you make a really excellent point, and I think also it should be noted that with the federal funds being impacted in various ways, we are mindful that the allocation of funds for liquid fuels, which I do believe has recently been discussed at the federal level and state level, and so I certainly am cautious and mindful that we may not get funds in the upcoming years, and so that's something that we are going to need to manage that possibly very differently and very creatively.
And I think it's good to we have a maximum set for that account, so that you're not just holding money there when it could be spent, and you don't have to supplement it with money from the general fund. But I think maybe seeing how the next couple of years go, and, if you were interested in going back and looking at some of the expenditures for next year in that fund, you could look outside of microsurfacing. So we could bring that back for Thursday, maybe.
Yeah.
If Ms. Strickland is finished, we will recognize Mr. Heller.
No, and again, I appreciate seeing things in black and white, so thank you, staff, for putting this together. This adds a lot of clarity, and sometimes it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. Well, that's a horse with a different color, once you actually see these things. So one of the comments that I had, though, is regarding the oak wilt, or I should say the oak trees. And I'm wondering, just speaking with constituents, if this is an item that we would consider reducing to only do this in R1 zones, either within the regional growth boundary or outside, and remove the RR zone.
I think that's certainly feedback that we can discuss at a staff level. In terms of accepting, rejecting, or proposing a modified amount, I think we can carry those conversations into Thursday. But certainly, I think that feedback is valuable, and we can give that some considerable thought. But ultimately, not necessarily confirming that at this time. But if you want to discuss that allocation, we're happy to.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an important one. Again, I'm just constituent feedback is important. The other one was just the Sycamore Drive turnaround. Again, I like seeing things in black and white, and the idea of a large truck like that backing down that steep road is a bad idea. So that makes perfect sense to me. And then finally, back to this truck. I hate to say I think maybe a question to come back with is, what happens if that truck, because it's used as a plow truck, breaks down? And maybe that's something that isn't answered tonight, but maybe at Thursday. What happens? Does that just mean we are out of luck until a replacement comes in, or what our plan is for that? And if it is something that is so dire, then of course maybe that is something that just remains and we bite the bullet on it. But having some context Thursday would be good.
We could certainly bring that back for Thursday discussion, and I would say, to your point, that's also our concern, is the safety, and how that can impact the operations. And to your point, if we only have so many options, and if something goes down, it takes several weeks, sometimes months, before we can get it repaired.
That's exactly the concern. So
Thank you.
Those are my only items to review here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? So yeah. I guess, was there anything, well, James, you had parks tonight, but was there anything from parks that actually, did we even flag anything? Anything that you just needed, had any questions for us to?
Seal coating.
Oh, yes, the seal coat, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that was the only one, so we'll recognize Patty.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. Can we push it off a year? Can we?
It's part of the general maintenance program, just as we seal coat bike paths and everything else. You could, yeah.
So we tend to seal coat every year? Or-
Yeah. Yes. Usually, what's done is the staff will review areas that are specifically, prime for seal coating as a maintenance measure, identify those areas, and then, that's part of the contract is, part of the seal coating contract is that the parking lots will be included in that. Yeah, it's not, some years it's more than others, but it's just part of the general maintenance program of maintaining the parking lots.
If I'm understanding correctly, it's also tied into bike paths, so sometimes it's beneficial if you're gonna have somebody out seal coating, give them a sizable enough job that they wanna bid on and.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes you can maybe even get a better price depending on how much work you have.
Yeah, that's true. And those, the seal coating contract, that's one of those sort of regional piggyback contracts.
Yeah, that's it.
We all do it once. But I mean, that doesn't have anything, it's not to say that we should or shouldn't do one parking lot versus another, or no parking lots this
Yeah.
year.
I guess just like roads, it goes back into what kind of a level of service, do we want to maintain? What do our residents expect?
Yeah, to me, I mean, yeah, I just would think that seal coating could be one of those things that's done every other year. And that's just my personal opinion. That's why I just flagged it, But if we're looking to save money,
Right.
that would be an easy one for me. That's more of an aesthetic, the nice.
Are we reflagging flagged items so that I'm assuming we're gonna get back to this
Yeah.
on Thursday when Omari's here.
Yeah.
Is
well,
Omari going to be here on Thursday? I don't think
Oh, I
he
don't
is.
know. Oh.
Mr. Patterson did just join us.
Oh.
I guess that is a big question I'm thinking of right now. We do have some stuff flagged, but we haven't really necessarily got into, is this something we're gonna allocate in the budget? Is this something we're gonna decrease the allocation, increase the allocation? So I'm getting affirmatives from Jana. Staff is gonna want us to, come back and say, hey, which direction do we wanna go with the budget? Do we like it as prepared? Do we wanna change things? What do we wanna change? So that is something we'll have to decide collectively as a board, so they can work on the final product.
I think so.
We done?
Yeah.
I don't think we're done.
Yeah, what is the agenda?
Well, yeah, we did.
Flags on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
I guess we're revenue and debt
See.
on Thursday.
So yeah, we reviewed the flag items, so
Yeah, so we could come, because we didn't talk about debt. Yeah, so.
I guess just doing just checking anything else.
So this evening, the board is, we can go through the flagged items and we can confirm the position, or we can delay that till Thursday.
How's everyone feeling?
And I believe that is
And-
It's 8:00.
I think
the only thing we have.
And a 4-hour block,
I know we do have.
you think would be sufficient for Thursday?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, especially,
Most of your responses were already given this evening. It's more of going
Yeah.
through and accepting, rejecting, or proposing a modification.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
in fact, I think it'll be a short.
Trying to think how we want to go through that then on Thursday.
Yeah.
I guess just kind of go down the line and see where the balance is on each of the flags, so. Okay,
Yep, so we can go back through the flagged items on Thursday
Alright.
and make a final decision.
this was so helpful.
Yeah, James, and I gotta tell you, the last couple of days have been extremely busy, and, a lot of those inquiries that he provided responses to, I'm not sure where he found the time, but it was bravo. Well done, James.
Yeah, it was
well done,
Spoke
so thank
so clearly on all the issues and provided examples. I mean, I knew most of those responses just by way of meeting with staff over the last 7 months. And James really dug into it to give you a really thorough, written, prepared response. So many thanks to James for all of that.
And I just wanted to make sure too, can you scan this and send this to Omari electronically?
Absolutely. We
Awesome.
can send it to the entire
All of
board.
these, anything that came to us.
Yes,
Okay.
that's a great
Okay.
idea. We can
Yeah.
have that over tomorrow, midday, if not earlier, of course.
All right, Omari, they're coming your way electronically.
okay. So I feel good wrap winding down. CNET got it on record. We think a 4-hour block for Thursday is good, so no 1 a.m. meeting. So, yeah, if nobody else has anything to add for this evening, we'll go on to communications to the board. I just had an email regarding Habitat for Humanity. So,
Yes. I believe I had similar.
nothing else? So our next meeting will be this Thursday, 6 p.m. right here. And then we will have tentatively, we have a regular meeting for October 21st. The chair and vice chair will consult with the manager. If they don't have any agenda items, we usually will give people time back. Otherwise, just take note of that for your calendars. And Patty, do you want to accept or reject item number 10 in the, as we're talking about budget?
I actually wanted to go back to calendar items.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
sent
yeah,
you
yeah.
an email.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, and I don't have it with me again. Anyway. I got an email about from the economic development to the Ferguson Forward folks and some of those meetings coming up. And Jeremy, do you have the email there?
Yes. They've heard from 919 individuals holding build sessions on Tuesday, October 21st, Wednesday, October 22nd, and a virtual option on October 30th. And
Will that be on our website?
There will, and there will be a presentation by
Yeah.
Fourth Economy at the Board of Supervisors regular meeting on October 21st.
Okay.
So a lot of the questions that many of you may have, you can ask directly to the consultant for a status update, as well as just whatever general questions you might have for the consultant.
Awesome, thanks.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Chair just said we don't have to meet next Tuesday if we're good.
Well,
no.
I didn't want to interrupt and be the person that brought that informational update to him at this point in time, but yes, when he would have checked in and I would have shared that scheduled.
It sounds like that meeting will occur. Given your smart Alex, I will direct the manager to meet.
But you get it.
But we'll take a day. We can always reconsider that.
It is good.
Rain check.
Well, in that case.
I was going to say, considering this was a busy month, if I had the opportunity to give time back, I would. But again, we are charged with a job, and we'll also look at it this way. I think I counted one time we only have 5 more meetings left for the year, and regular meetings, and then we usually do get a little bit of a breather around the holidays. So we're getting there.
I'd like to see Lisa's reaction when you say only 5 more meetings again. Can we all get that on?
Can we have a party?
It's a very straight face when you say
All
that.
right, with that in mind, motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.